Hey everybody, today we're going to learn some more details about the water cycle. On each slide, there's going to be an important vocabulary word for you to define in your notes page. I'm also going to give you some additional information to help you understand the vocabulary word, but all you're required to write down is the definition. Let's begin by talking about evaporation. This is the process of a liquid changing into a gas due to an increase in temperature or pressure. If air pressure is high on the surface of a body of water, such as a lake or a river or even the ocean, then the water will not evaporate easily. Evaporation does happen easily if air pressure is low. Think about it this way. The Earth is surrounded by a layer of air, and it's thicker in some areas than in others. When this layer of air is thicker, there's more air, which creates a higher pressure. Where the layer of air is thinner, the lower the pressure is. And this is because high places do not have as much air above them pressing down. So evaporation occurs more easily at high altitudes, like on top of a mountain. Okay, now let's talk about sublimation. This is the process of snow and ice changing into water vapor without first melting into water. So this is what happens when a solid transforms quickly into a gas without first passing through the liquid stage. Particles of a solid will absorb enough energy to increase their temperature and completely overcome the force of attraction between them. And most substances can sublimate only at very low pressure. Now let's talk about transpiration. This is when plants absorb water through their roots and then give off water vapor through their leaves. If you could look at a leaf through a microscope, you would see that the surface of the leaf is dotted with openings called stomata. When the stomata open, like the pores in your skin, when they open, they allow oxygen and water vapor out, and carbon dioxide flows in. 10% of the moisture in the atmosphere comes from transpiration. Okay, now let's talk about condensation. This is the process of a gas changing into a liquid due to a decrease in temperature or pressure. Condensation occurs when a gas, such as water vapor, touches a cooler surface. So that's why you sometimes see condensation on the side of a glass of ice water. During condensation, the molecules in the water vapor slow way down. As heat energy is removed, the state of matter changes from a gas to a liquid. Next, we'll talk about precipitation. This is when condensed water vapor falls back to Earth, such as in the case of snow, rain, or sleet. Interestingly enough, fog and mist are not considered precipitation, but rather they're called suspensions. The water vapor is not condensed enough in the case of fog or mist to actually fall to the ground. Surface runoff is precipitation that reaches Earth's surface, flows over the land, and reaches lakes, rivers, and oceans. So surface runoff can only occur when excess water that flows over the land is no longer able to soak into the soil below. So if the soil is completely saturated with moisture, that's when surface runoff can occur. Although surface runoff is an important part of the water cycle, it can create problems related to pollution. When it occurs in areas where chemicals are in the soil, or if the ground has just been disturbed, like during farming, if the soil is plowed up, then you can get a lot of erosion because the surface runoff starts to wash away the soil. Infiltration is when precipitation and runoff soaks into the ground or the soil. The water moves into the rocks and cracks and pores and crevices that are in the ground. Some factors that influence infiltration include soil quality. So, for example, if the soil where you live is very sandy, water is able to seep into the ground more easily than, say, the clay soil that we have in this area. Also, ground cover and the kinds of plants that are growing in an area can influence infiltration. If you have a lot of ground cover, the root systems of those plants slow down runoff. It gives the water more time to sit on the surface of the soil and therefore also more time to soak into the soil. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about accumulation. This is when water collects in rivers, lakes, oceans, and other bodies of water, or when it accumulates as ice caps and glaciers. Remember at the beginning of the week, we said that a lot of the fresh water on Earth is actually stored in a frozen state. Accumulation can also occur underground, like in aquifers. When water condenses and precipitates, it eventually runs off surfaces on the ground and collects again in these bodies of water. Gravity is always going to pull water to its lowest possible point. And that's why a lot of runoff seeps into the ground and eventually makes its way to underground aquifers. Okay, so that's the end of today's slideshow. Remember that my only requirement for this work today is for you to copy down the definition of each of these terms that we've reviewed.